Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ben. With the end of the month coming up and being no favorite game Friday for me to record, I figured that this would be a good time to talk about games that I taught over the last few months at the shop. I didn't count how many, but there's a good stack over to my right here, and I just figured I'd give a brief overview of those games and talk about the games that I taught these past few weeks. Some of them were requests, so ones that people asked me to bring, and others were ones that I just brought and taught, or ones from the shop library that I just grabbed and because they were easy to teach. All except for one of them, which I had brought, which was probably a mistake trying to teach it because it was a bit longer and a bit more complex and I had not played it before. But we figured it out eventually. I will talk about that in a second. But the first one I taught was a flip and write game, Welcome To, where you have a neighborhood board, as seen here, and you are taking either your pen or your dry erase markers, if you have the dry erase ones like I do, and you are flipping over cards and writing those numbers in your streets, and you won't do that in ascending order, and you are attempting to finish off different neighborhoods and accomplish different goals. It's a very nice, simple game. Plays well at many player counts. You can play a lot of people with this, and highly recommend if you're interested in a little puzzly game that plays in about 20-25 minutes. This is a good one to go for. Next one is a game from last year that came out as Land versus Sea. That is you can play, there's different ways to play. There's 2-player where one person plays as land, one person plays as sea, and you have these tiles here, and you have to try and finish off different land and sea areas and score points based on how large that area is. There's also a 3-player version where you can play at like asymmetric, where one person plays as the cartographer. You can also do 4-player, where it's teams of 2 people playing as land, 2 people versus playing sea. I've only played the 2-player version of this so far, but it was okay. I mean, I definitely want to give it a few more tries. When I taught it at the shop, I definitely didn't get the right tiles that I needed to fill in the areas of sea, because I was the sea team, and so the land team had lots of land areas that they were able to fill in, and they had one big area of land that they were able to score a whole bunch of points for, and I just wasn't able to finish off my big body of water. So that was a little frustrating. I still enjoy this game. Not my favorite of the tile placement games, but definitely one I'm going to give another try to. Maybe try different player counts, try the 3-player asymmetric, or maybe the teams, and see how that goes. The next one I taught was, we played a 3-player game of it, and that is Splendor. Splendor is, this is a sort of engine building Euro game where you have these different developments that you are trying to buy with these like poker chip sort of pieces that you'll be getting, and these are gems, and you're going to be grabbing gems and using these gems to buy different establishments, and with each establishment that you buy, your other establishments cost less equal to that particular gem type, and so you're trying to race to get to 15 points. And you have nobles in the game that once you get a certain number of different types of gems, you will have nobles that come visit you, and those will give you extra points as well. So it's a fun little race to 15 points thing that's really good for really anyone. I had really a lot of success teaching it to lots of different people, and I got this Etsy box that I like to use for it. It's about 1/4 of the size of the actual game box, And so it's really good for like travel. I've taken it back to when I was traveling. I've taken it to the shop with me. It's a good thing to keep it nice and compact. It doesn't take a ton of space in my bag. Next one I played was a 5-player game, a Bang the Dice game. It is a game in which players will have hidden roles. One person will be the sheriff, and then they will have outlaws that will be trying to kill them, and then there's renegades who are trying to be the last one standing. So you're rolling dice, and you're trying to shoot people with these sort of bullseye things here. There's also beer to replenish health. There's also these dynamites where if you have 3, you bust and your turn is over. And there's also the arrows. Once you take arrows, if you roll the arrow, if you get the arrows, you take the arrows, and you have to keep them in front of you. And once all the arrows are gone from the center of the table, the Indians attack, and whoever has arrows take damage equal to the arrows that they have. And this was a fun one. I lost pretty quickly because the 2 people that were the outlaws, I was a sheriff, and the 2 people that were the outlaws were not very shy about being the outlaws, and so they were pretty noticeably going after me right from the beginning. And I didn't get a ton of help from the renegades, but that's just how it goes. It's a quick game that plays about 10 minutes, so it doesn't really matter because it's not supposed to take very long anyway. The next one I played was Cryptid. It's a social deduction game where you have, I'll show you. You have these different terrain types that you're building out a board with, and you have these little discs and cubes, and you have a clue in your little booklet here that will tell you like where the cryptid could be. It's like not in the forest, within one of the forest, within one of a green structure, things like that. That helps you determine where it could be. And each person has a clue of where the cryptid could be, and you are either asking people questions, kind of like in Clue, like, hey, could the monster be here? And they have to place a disc for yes or a cube for no, or you can also search, and if you find, and you're trying to find where the monster is before everyone else does. It was a fun game. We enjoyed it. It's definitely one that every player has to understand what their role is, what their clues are, and they have to make sure that they don't say yes or no to at the wrong time. Like that they're keeping true to the game and not making any mistakes. We had a problem with the first game, but once after the first game, it was pretty straightforward, and we had no issues after that. We played like 4 games of it, and they went pretty quickly. I would have wished that they came with more discs and cubes in the game. I did contact the company Osprey, emailing them asking if I could buy some more, and they just told me to look on Amazon or eBay, which I thought was really weird for a publisher to tell you to search on Amazon or eBay for spare parts. I thought that was really, really baffling to me. I just didn't understand that, but hey, I don't want to buy a second box of this, so I'll just use the components that are in there. But I just hope that once I play more and more of this game that we don't ever have a time where we run out of pieces for it. And one week we were looking for a nice quick puzzle game that was really easy to get into, so I played my favorite one, Calico. I taught that. We had a nice 4-player game of that. Played about 20 minutes, I think we played this game in. It's all you're doing is you have your quilt board, and you are drafting tiles of different colors and patterns, and you are matching different colors and patterns. Colors to get buttons that will give you points, and cats, you want to get a certain number of patterns in a row to get a cat to come lay on your board, and that will score you bonus points. This is a fun little one. It gets very frustrating if you're one of the people that takes the game seriously and have your mind set on a certain strategy and have it not work out for you. But I enjoy it quite a lot. I don't take this game too seriously, and I like the puzzly aspect of it in that Calico. Next one is New York Zoo, a really fun game. We played this game 2 times in a row because we enjoyed the first game so much. We played in about 45 minutes or so. I know there was another group of 4 people that played this game, and it took them much longer to play it than we did. We went a little quickly. But New York Zoo is a game where you have a board and you are going around here's here, I'll show you. It's a little New York Zoo here, and what you are doing is you are going to move the elephant around, drafting different animals and shapes, and you are trying to fill in your board here, and the first one to fill in their board with different completely fill it with attractions will win the game. It's a really nice, easy game that really works well for all player counts. I mean, I played it solo. That was nice. We played it at 5, and that was nice. At the shop, this month we played it at 4. And every game I played, like, no matter what the player count and who I played it with, experienced gamers, new gamers, it's always been super close and crunchy. Like, it's down to like 1 or 2 turns where everyone's had a chance to play and win. And so that's been interesting. Which reminds me of another Uwe Rosenberg game that I've taught, and that is Patchwork. Patchwork is another Uwe Rosenberg polyomino game where you have different quilt shapes, and you have a square board here. You have a little square board, and you have this thing where you're going around and you are going to be moving this. This is to keep track of how much time you have left. So you have to pay for, you have these little shaped tiles here, and you have to pay for them, not only with buttons, which are currency in the game, but you also have your time, which is kept track of here, because once you're out of time, you can't build anymore. And you're playing to see whoever has the most buttons after, because every time you pass a button, then you get income, which your income is how many buttons you have on your board. But however, you also have to be careful not to run out of time, or because once the game is over and your time is run out, you lose a point. You lose 2 points for every empty space in your board, so you can very easily, if you're not careful, have negative points by the end of the game. So that's an interesting thing. There's 2 things I really like about this game. I like that there's 2 types of currency. The buttons are currency, but you also have to keep track of time as a currency as well. Also, the fact that it's not the turn order is not like clockwise. It's determined by whoever is behind. So, like, you could potentially be taking 2-3 turns in a row because you're like way behind someone in time. So you have to so you don't pass your turn to the next person until you played enough turns to pass them on the time track. So I thought that's an interesting concept. So I like that a lot. But not as much as I like New York Zoo, but this is still a quality game that I would highly recommend. This is a 2-player only game, so you can only play it at 2 players, where this can play 1 to 5. So that's one thing to keep in track if you're looking for polynomial games. But this one plays in about 45 to an hour. This plays in about 20, 25, sometimes 30 minutes. This one also there's an Americana version. There's also a Christmas version and a Halloween version, and there's also a Valentine's Day version that just came out for that. So if you don't like these bland, different design things, there's like the Halloween version, there's the Valentine's version, there's the Christmas version, there's the Americana version. There's also an express version where if you think that 20, 25, 30 minutes is too long for a game, there's one that shortens the game a little bit. Next one is Junk Art. That is a stacking game where you have different pieces of junk that you are stacking, and there's a bunch of different ways to play. Whenever I play the game, I don't like scoring because the different mini games in this game are very inconsistent with how many points you can score. Like one game could be worth like 10 points, or you can get like 10 points for the game, where one might be only worth like 4 or 5. So the way I always play this is I just pick an event or two, and we'll just play that and not do with the victory point tokens. But this is a fun one. Definitely, if you're gonna buy this, get the wood version. Don't buy the plastic. Plastic version is not very good. Make sure you get the wooden pieces, not the plastic pieces. All right. Nextly, we have a racing game, and that is Downforce. It's Formula 1 cars. This game was originally released, I think, in the 80s. It's just a simple, you have your car, you are playing a car, and that will tell you which cars you move and how many spaces and in what order. And you can also, so on your turn, you play a card, and it moves certain cars. You can not only move your own car, but other cars. So you can be sneaking, like you can keep a car like behind another car, like trapping it, so that way it can't move anymore. And that's a good sneaky thing to cut off movement. There's also special powers, and there's also betting lines. Like you can see here the board. You have these yellow lines. Like once a car passes the yellow line, you bet on who you think is going to win the race. And you can bet on a car that's not your own. And you can win the game by just betting on cars. You don't have to be the one whose car wins the game. You just have to be the one who gets the most money from different things. And so that's an interesting thing. It's very, very simple the way you're just playing cards, and it just tells you where to move and how much each to move, and you just move the cars. Next one was a Zool. We played that last week, I think it was. Yeah, so this is going to be a tile game where you have little factory displays around the table, which will have 4 different tiles in them. And so you'll take from the factory display all of one particular type. You'll have, like as you can see here, there'll be there'll be like blues and reds and all these different designs. And you are just trying to fill up entire rows on your player board here with all of the same type. And once that is filled up, you get to put it, at the end of the round, you get to put here onto that row the one of the tiles, and you play until one row is filled out. There's lots of how to play videos on it. It's a really simple game, and it also uses a unique mechanic where you can take, instead of from the factory displays, all the ones that weren't taken go to the center. And then the first one to take from the center takes the first player token, and that first player token determines who goes first in the next round. So you can totally just, if you play it right, you can go first every single round of the game. And so it costs you like 2, sometimes 3 points per round to take that token. But if you want to go first every time, it's worth it. And it's a nice mechanic where you're not guaranteed to go to be first at one point in the game. You have to actually take the first player token. You have to actually grab that token in order to ensure yourself of going first at some point in the game. So that's an interesting thing. That's a Zool. There's some different versions, as you can see. You might be able to see there's the stained glass of Sintra version. There's the Summer Pavilion, which are like the diamond-shaped pieces, and there's the Queen's Garden, which is the new version. Now, from one stained glass game to another, I taught Sagrada. This is a dice game where you have these little tiny D6 dice, and you have your window display here, and you are going to be taking a sheet, and that will tell you like where you can place certain numbers and certain colors. And you are drafting, so you're taking a certain number of them based on number of players, and you have like 10 rounds, and you're rolling those dice, and you're going to take one from that display, and you have to follow the rules that are on your player card. But not only that, you cannot have one die that's of the same color or number orthogonically next to one of that same color or number. So you have to make sure that you don't have matching numbers or colors touching each other at any point in your board. And you'll have different goals. You'll have your own private goals, cards that you'll get at the beginning of the game, as well as ones that are in the center of the table for everyone. And you're going to play to 10 rounds, and after the 10 rounds, you'll score up points based on the goals in the center, as well as the ones that you have in your hand that you got at the beginning of the game. So there's different ways to score. Each game is going to be different in that way, and so that's cool, but it's also a very light game. Next was one that was requested that I teach, and that is Abyss. It is a very beautiful game. As you can see here, it is an underwater themed game where you are going to be acquiring ocean allies, and you have pearls in the game, which are your currency, and those pearls will be used to be buying cards from other people, as well as using your allies to recruit lords, and those lords will give you points at the end of the game, as well as different things like more pearls, special abilities that will restrict your opponents, as well as help yourself, and gives you keys, which keys will be used to unlock locations, which will also give you a special bonuses. So it's definitely a fun game. I really enjoyed it when I taught it and played it. It's definitely one that does a whole lot with very little, and it has a nice mechanic where you can do basically whatever you want as long as you're rich enough to be able to afford to do it. And so that's pretty good. It's like you can always pay for things with extra pearls. If you have enough pearls, you could do whatever you want. If you have enough pearls, you can buy cards from your opponent. If you have enough pearls, you can acquire these more expensive lords that would otherwise require a lot of allies to do so. So it's a pretty interesting thing. You're recruiting allies. You're using those allies to recruit lords. Those lords will give you points and special abilities. You'll also have the depth track, which will let you fight the deep monsters, and you can either choose to fight it or skip past it. And each time someone skips past it, the rewards that you get from fighting it increase. And so that's an interesting thing. So like you have to determine a lot of times in the game, like what do you do to help yourself, and what do you take for yourself just so your opponents don't get it. And so that's an interesting thing that definitely a lot of games should take note from. Definitely a great game. Definitely recommend Abyss if you. The artwork in this game is gorgeous. The little pearls that you have in the game are really, really nice. I'll show you. Here are some of the cards here. Some of the lords you can. There's like pearls, these plasticky pearls, as well as these shell things to keep all your pearls, all your currency in them. You can see here, like you got these different artworks. It's definitely a very cool looking game that does a whole lot without adding a ton of complexity to the game. So if you're looking for a nice medium to like heavier light game that does a whole lot strategically with very little complexity, this is definitely the one for you. Especially if you like the underwater theme and you like beautiful artwork, this is definitely one that is worth you checking out. It's by Bruno Catala, who designed a whole bunch of games, so he is no stranger to board game design, and that definitely shows in this game. And 2 left. This one we played a few times, and that is Menara. That will be a competitive stacking game where you are going to be having these different shaped pieces, and you are going to be taking these pillars. You'll have these different colored pillars here, and you are going to be stacking them up, matching the colors, and you're going to be stacking as high as you can, and in hopes of winning the game. You win the game by getting to a certain number of levels on the board. You'll have different objectives here. There'll be easy, medium, and hard objectives for you to try to accomplish. And every time you can't do an objective, the game gets harder, where you have another level that adds to your difficulty for playing this game. You also have this excuse me, this camp where you can swap tiles if you have a bunch of tiles. These pillar tiles that you can't use for anything, you can swap with at the beginning of your turn before you take a gold card. You can take from here, and you can swap them out. It's definitely a lot of fun. Definitely one that you will be on the edge of your seat for, and it's one where it's cooperative, so you're not competing with everyone else to try and you're hoping for everyone to knock it over. You're one where everyone is working together to try and get the tallest structure possible. And it has those little tiny pillars, as you see, so it's not very sturdy, so you got to be extra careful with it. But it's a lot of fun. It's got a lot of stuff. I mean, the box is way too big for, as you can see here, like how much, like it has this much stuff. This box could literally be half that size. So that kind of bothers me a little bit, but it's a great game, so it's definitely worth the space on the shelf. It's definitely one I'm going to bring back to the shop again at some point, but I have all this stuff here. And last, but definitely not least, was the one that I offered to teach people. I brought to the shop. I did the unboxing for, brought to the shop. I brought a whole bunch of lighter, easier, shorter games, and I gave them the choice of learning to play this game. Well, it's an amazing game. It's great. I definitely recommend it if you're into medium weight Euro style games, but it was not for the casual game night. And I'm talking about Obsession. We played a 4-player game of this And it took a bit to set up. It took a bit to teach the game. It took a whole bunch of times referencing the rulebook for different things in the game. It took a while longer than it should have, and we didn't even finish the whole game. We finished like 3/4 of the game and had to stop because the shop was closing. Obsession is a Victorian England themed game where you are running a manor. You are a family running a manor, and you are using currency, which British pounds, to build certain rooms, build more rooms, larger rooms, better rooms, improvements to your house, getting new cards, which are going to be different characters in the game, which are called gentry. There'll be different ladies and gentlemen, and you'll be building different rooms, which those rooms will get you more servants. They will also cost you servants. They'll cost you money. They'll cost you all different kinds of things in order to host these like parties in these different rooms, which each guest that you have will give you a certain benefit, and you are building up your prestige in hopes of being the most prestigious person in order to court and marry, hopefully at the end, court one of the Fairchild siblings. It's a great game. Definitely recommend if you're into more of like the medium to heavier medium weight games, I would say. Definitely one worth checking out. It's not the easiest game to get. You have to buy it directly from the publisher, but I've talked to the publisher, the designer Dan, who also is in charge of basically the whole company at this point, and he's been very helpful with all questions I've had, with all the content I put out for this game. He's been really supportive with that, and he even sent me a couple of different expansion things for it, so I'm very grateful for that. Definitely a game I'm going to be coming back to, just not with that game group. So I will put all these back into frame to kind of show you all the games that I taught. And then these were all the games that I taught this month, or at least the last 3 weeks or so. If anyone has played any of these, please let me know in the comments, or if anyone has any tips or has any experiences teaching any of these games and want to share, drop it down in the comments below. If you have not already, please subscribe to the channel and like the video if you can. Thank you for watching, and have a great day. Bye.